I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was depressed. Through that apparent depression, I came across the no fap movement, which is basically you just like abstain from orgasms. People say this makes them feel better. Why don't I give it a shot? I did it and I felt like I got those superpowers. Post Orgasmic Illness Syndrome is a rare sexual medicine disease where patients get one of multiple clusters of symptoms following orgasm, including muscle tension, ear, nose, throat symptoms, and the pathophysiology is currently not understood. Personally, I tend to experience mostly the general cluster, which is a bit of fatigue. I need a little bit more sleep. I can have trouble articulating sometimes, and I get a little bit anxious. So I'm like, maybe people are experiencing this. I'm not alone in this.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Moss from Life as a Patient Doctor. I am very excited to interview Isaac, who's a fourth-year medical student at UMass Chan SOM, applying to urology. During his undergraduate studies at University of Maryland, he found a very rare disease of sexual dysfunction called Post Orgasmic Illness Syndrome, POIS. Since then, he has been engaged in research and advocacy aimed at helping patients with POIS and other disabilities. Thank you for being here, Isaac.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for having me on.
I am so excited. Tell me about your journey into this health condition and medicine.
Yeah, I had a really long journey in medicine. I actually started at community college. So this manifested when I was at community college. For those who don't know about the disease, it makes sense to explain a little bit. Post-orgasmic illness syndrome is a rare sexual medicine disease where patients get one of multiple clusters of symptoms following orgasm. It'll last for about 2 to 7 days and then just spontaneously resolves. Only happens with orgasm, but typically happens with every orgasm. The general cluster has patients feeling fatigued. There are some minor to not minor psychiatric symptoms. Sometimes people have difficulty articulating, something that you see in things like a stroke or a TIA. So it's really strange. And then there's a whole nother slew of clusters, including muscle tension, ear, nose, throat symptoms. And the pathophysiology is currently not understood. Personally, I tend to experience mostly just general cluster, which is a bit of fatigue. I need a little bit more sleep. I can have trouble articulating sometimes, and I get a little bit anxious. I can function. Usually, people who know me really well will be able to notice, but besides that, everything's pretty much the ordinary. Some people that I know have it a lot worse than me, so I'm lucky to have it the way I do. But yeah, when I say I first noticed I had it, that's what I noticed. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was depressed. Through that apparent depression, I came across the no fap movement, which is basically you just like abstain from orgasms. It's this huge, yeah, it's crazy. It's this huge community online. There's a subreddit that has over 1 million subscribers. If you've heard of No Fap November, I don't know, we're getting a little men's healthy right now. So I was like, okay, people say this makes them feel better. Why don't I give it a shot? I remember reading on there, you get superpowers if you don't orgasm for a week. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I did it and I felt like I got those superpowers. I looked on the Reddit and some people were just like, nah, it's BS. It might be good for discipline, might help you stay focused on things that matter. People with like porn addiction, that's great to challenge that, gain control over themselves. But I was like, no, I feel like I get superpowers. Then when I noticed the symptoms come on again, I was like, maybe it's just that I feel worse with orgasm. Maybe it's not that I get superpowers. It's just that I'm a normal human being when I don't orgasm. It still took me another couple of years to find post-orgasmic illness syndrome. There are a few things out there. There's like postcoital tressage or something like that. It was some weird names. And it's just, oh yeah, you feel a little bit sad after sex. Okay, that's fine. And I was like, that's what I latched onto for a little bit because I'm like, this is the only thing that I found that describes anything being wrong after orgasm. Then eventually, after continued digging, I found this huge community on POIScenter.com. There are over 1,000 members and tons of visitors. So I'm like, maybe people are experiencing this. I'm not alone in this for the first time. Isn't that crazy that in the age of the internet, it's good for these things? I would probably still be alone to this day. I've never spoken to anyone in person who has this disease. So I found this when I was on the fence about medicine. I went on this thing. It was such a desperate population, I guess is the best way to say it, because it was a rare disease. They were literally volunteering their own money for research efforts. They're just like, we need help. Just to give a sense of what people can feel with this disease, there's threads about relationship issues, people in these threads despairing about, I'll never find someone, and not knowing how to disclose it in relationships. In a survey that I just administered, it seems like there's some internalization of people saying there is something wrong with who I am. And so people just convinced that they'll never have a relationship, people not able to hold down a job. I remember seeing this, and that was the first time that I realized it's bad, but it's not the worst. Like, I have a life that kind of is working for the most part. Although I did have issues with the relationship stuff for a little bit, which is not a problem anymore. I'm engaged. I'd show you the ring, but I don't get one these days until you get married. Hey, you gotta.
Excuse me. My husband has a ring too. When we got engaged, no.
Oh
There's
my God,
a
that's so funny.
societal
Too. My
thing.
brother does too. Yeah, so I can talk more about the relationship stuff later. But the point is, they were on there and I saw a desperate cry for research, for solutions. You should see the theory crafting that people do. There were some really intelligent people just proposing all these different mechanisms and everything. At that point, I was like, wait, did I just find myself in a crazy position where I'm postured for medical school? And I have one of the biggest motivators that anyone could have to do anything, which is fix your love life and help thousands of men who are struggling. You're in the trenches with them. These are my bros. We're struggling of the same disease. We're pouncing at every new article that comes out together. And I'm just like, wait a second. Why don't I be the one who is writing this next article? Why don't I be the one who is helping move this forward? Because recently I posted a survey that I had on the Reddit forum. The first comment I got was, too slow, speed it up, or work at McDonald's. And part of it, I was like, internet troll. Oh my goodness, wow. But I was like, I can understand that though. This guy is probably experiencing an episode right now. I lean towards compassion. This guy is probably experiencing an episode right now. He feels absolutely helpless. And I did until I was until it wasn't like, oh, when does the next article come out? It's like, Isaac, get that next article out. It's on me now, which is great. It's empowering is what it is. It taught me a lesson as well, which is like, when you do something like this, when you're helping a population that's in pain, you got to turn the other cheek. You're going to get lashed out on. People are going to bite the hand that feeds you. I'm just like, this is part of the job. This is something I'm signing up for. Anyways, I guess we can chat about that a little bit. So that's my journey. Basically, yeah, I realized that I was in the position to turn an affliction into a motivator in a mission.
Yes, I love that. That was such a great story. I felt like I was in your position. Granted, for me,
Yeah.
my own diagnosis of understanding my sexual health condition was in medical school. I hear you in the sense
Yeah.
of being alone for so long, not knowing it was a problem until
Right.
hearing other people. That concept of not being alone and finding community online. I love how the internet has done that in some cases. It's definitely brought together individuals who would never had that opportunity to connect and help them feel like they're not alone, help them feel more power and agency. And you've really turned that, oh, I have that opportunity to do something. And
Yeah.
you've done your research, your publishing. That is amazing that you have been able to really transform. This is literally the epitome of what it means to be an advocate. Understanding the pain and struggles, doing something and sharing the needs of the community for people on the outside that would never understand if it doesn't happen to them.
Yeah.
So you applied to medical school. What did that look like for you, applying to medical school and also starting medical school?
I remember it like it were yesterday.
Tell me more.
I applied during the COVID year. That trauma really baked these memories into me. I went to a small high school. My dad taught at a small private school, ended up going there, although I was homeschooled before. Yeah, interesting route. I had a proclivity for the sciences. I didn't really like math. I was good enough at math, but I really liked chemistry. I thought chemistry was so cool. I like biology. It does feel like memorization. You only start to piece it together a little bit later on, but I loved chemistry. So people are like, oh, be a doctor. I was like, I don't know about all that. My grandpa's a businessman and he seems to do pretty well. And I'm following his footsteps. But then I remember one of my good friends' parents convinced me. And I was just like, okay, if it means taking more chemistry classes, let's do this. It sounds great. I didn't have any connections to the medical field, though, so it was hard to even know what that looked like. I had some struggles in undergrad, and I actually ended up bouncing back and forth between business and pre-med during my first couple years while I was at community college. When I transferred and I settled on medicine, I also noticed that I really liked economics. It was a cool kind of framework to look at the world through. And pre-med, when you're picking a second major, my philosophy on it is either have it give you a hard skill that you will keep that you can use in medical school, like statistics, coding, or languages. Those are just the ones that pop to mind for me because you can use those in medical school. You will use those. Public health, maybe if you have like more of a research focus in undergrad, I think that would be good. Or you do something that will give you a framework to look at the world through, like psych, probably. You'd be the expert. Econ, philosophy, things like that. So I chose the latter, but I did choose the numbers heavy one, which was a mistake because I just ended up doing a bunch of math and not learning a whole lot about the framework for the world.
Wait, did you
So
say you did economics or philosophy?
I did economics.
Okay, you said the
Yeah,
latter,
yeah,
so I was like, wait,
yeah. Does
philosophy.
math come in?
Yeah,
What are they doing to philosophy these days? No.
makes sense.
Yeah, that would be a bummer, honestly. I worked the whole way through undergrad. I actually worked 3 jobs because I always had to have the money piece, which was like a serving job usually. I worked in a fondue restaurant, which was great. And honestly, I think that's where I started to develop my patient-facing demeanor. It is where I developed that, honestly. And then I had to do my career pieces. So I worked in labs and I worked as a scribe, as an EMT. It was really tough to balance everything. And then also I clung on to my social life a little too strong. So my weekends, I would study in the mornings, go to work in the afternoons, and then be at the bars with my friends at midnight trying to catch up. And we all know how that usually goes. It was a tough time. I didn't quite crack the code. I needed to do an additional post-bac program. And yeah, this might be a good educational opportunity. I had some good semesters. I actually really picked it up towards the end when I realized that my social life had to go. I was like, I need to improve my study habit. I had this whole transformation over a summer. I watched so many YouTube videos. Shout out Kevin Jabal. Learn how to be a good student. And I absolutely killed it that next semester, but it was too little too late. I couldn't quite get my GPA there, although I really made strides. And the pre-health advising noticed, and they're like, yeah, you're on the right track, but you're not there. I declared a bio major. I was just doing the pre-med, but I was like, I need more upper level bio classes. So I did a DIY post-bac by just doing more upper level science classes at my institution. I got my GPA to a point where a post-bac would accept me. So I then did a 1-year formal post-bac master's program. I think it's dissolved now, but it was the JHU record enhancing post-bac. They have a career change in record enhancing. I did the record enhancing. That's when I really started to get things together, things into overdrive. I was studying for the MCAT, working at a lab, working at a restaurant, taking classes. It was a lot, but I have to say, I freaking killed it. Everything went well. And then COVID hit. That kind of made things even a little better for me. I'll be honest. We can acknowledge all the tragedy that happened, talking about my personal circumstance. My jobs didn't want me to come in anymore, but they still paid me. I got to stick the landing with the MCAT, and I got to write for my applications. Crazy enough, I think COVID helped my situation because I just had so much on my plate. I didn't know how to slow it down. I think COVID put the brakes on it for me, which was necessary. Back to the MCAT though, oh my goodness. I couldn't get a location to take the test at. And we weren't sure if it was even going to be included. So I'm studying for this test that I don't know if I'm going to take. I'm exhausted. How do you study for a test that you don't know if you're take when you're exhausted? And then I ended up, my sister had an apartment in North Carolina that she wasn't using because she was back from school because of COVID. The South doesn't really care as much. So there's a Prometric cert that's open down there. Go to that apartment, finish your studying, take the test. That's what I did.
That was such a common thing though. Like you're so not alone. I did the exact same thing, but with my step 1, because my step 1 was
wow.
during COVID. And it was like,
Yeah.
okay, what testing centers available in different states across the US.
I didn't think about it. I was just thinking about other pre-meds and the pre-meds who weren't quite there at test
Oh,
taking
step
yet.
1, step 2, step 3
Yeah.
had the same thing
I
going
didn't
on
think
with us.
about the whole medical trainee community was going through the same thing. That is crazy.
Even high schoolers trying to take the ACT and SAT, because like you
Yeah.
said, they even consider not even including it, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
or I should say, STEP was still included. That was during my time. I also failed, but and that was part
Oh,
of
wow.
the pass fail type transition during that.
Okay.
So yeah, it messed up everything.
Yeah. And you know what? The insult to injury was it was the most competitive year ever.
Really?
Yeah, it was
Huh.
the most competitive year. I was like, oh yeah, medical school just trends towards being competitive, but it just went back to normal the next year.
Mm.
I was like, this isn't fair. It was the hardest year to apply. And like you're saying, COVID didn't give anyone any passes. No one was just like, oh, you failed, but it was COVID year. So hard for everyone. But the standards were raised, at least for where I was at. The standards were raised. I was just like, this isn't fair. I've been prepping for 6 years to apply to medical school, and the 1 year I applied, this is going on. So, anyways,
I do remember that application year because we were talking in from the medical school point, we did see an increase in applicants. And
yeah,
the narrative that we said was, oh, now they have more time at home to prepare the application. So people that maybe would wait an additional year would now apply. Who knows if that was true, but that was the narrative that we were thinking when we're in medical school and hearing how many people were applying that year. But
yeah.
interesting being a part of then that community.
Yeah, so I think theory makes sense. To me, it's a mystery because they were all because I remember it started coming out, they're good.
Wow.
Like we have an increase in competitive applicants. And these aren't just people sitting on the couch randomly applying to medical school. So yeah, tough time. I made it by the skin of my teeth. I got an interview invite to UMass, interviewed in March. It was so late. There were no open spots anymore, so they put me on the wait list. I absolutely killed the interview. It was a MMI, mixed mini interview, and it really just relieved the pressure of being like, hey, you don't have to knock it out of the park with every single one. Just connect with people who you naturally connect with. Turns out UMass has a wonderful community, hitting a great connection with every single one of them, and it was great. And then I got put on the wait list, which was the best I could have hoped for at that time, and then I got accepted in June. It was pretty crazy.
That's amazing. What a journey and a testament to perseverance and not giving up. I think it also shows the challenges that will arise no matter where you are in your journey in and out of medicine, but doesn't mean
Yeah.
that it won't happen because like you said, you got into a place that was meant to be where you felt it in your gut that you connected. That's something I advocate for in interviews where med school or residency interviews. Trust your gut. Where do you enjoy? That community is so important.
Another thing, through my year of just absolutely grinding, just me and the books and all of that, I had gotten a little rigid. And I was like, I think I need to recalibrate myself. I know what it's like to be in a service industry. And I know I have some things that I need to get back in touch with, work on. So I started working as a mortgage loan officer, which is essentially a mortgage salesman slash mortgage project manager. You talk to people on the phone, you convince them to do your mortgage with your company, and then you walk them through the process. There's documentation, coordinating with various entities and stuff like that. As a pre-med, people were very much, you don't know what medicine is like, but it's very much working with the patient. Your borrower is your patient, and you need to establish rapport with them. You need to convince them of your credentials, convince them you're the guy to do the job. Sometimes you need to push back on people. They'd be like, oh, no, I'm fine. And we'd be like, you're sinking in debt right now. This can get your head above water right now. Eventually, I realized just that negotiation, that bargaining, just that business environment where persuasion is okay, whereas it can get a little touchy in medicine for good reason, obviously. I realized to take it not in the patient direction, this is a great practice for advocacy. And I was coming in at a time where doctors were at peak burnout and we're just getting trampled on legislatively in the clinic, hospital administrator, mid-levels, which I think has cooled down a lot since then, which is great. But we felt like we were getting trampled on in every direction. We need a backbone. We need to push back. We need to be persuasive. I think I'm getting all the skills that I need to really be an agent for change. You got to be smart, obviously, but this isn't a cold, sterile lab. This is complex political environment. And yeah, I think that was so great. And it turned me into an expert. I was just like, okay, I know the loan process. I know how to spot someone's financial position from a glance at a credit report. And you learn to read people. You learn to know things about people that they don't want to admit to themselves. So such a rich opportunity, but it made me very nervous because I'm just like, oh my goodness. If I don't get into medical school this year, they're going to be like, oh my God, this guy went from doing the Lord's work in a hospice clinic to swindling people out of their homes. Like, what's going on here? And I'm like, please. I got in my head about it. I really got in my head about it, but I'm sure it would have been fine because I did continue with EMT work and other things. I think I was also doing hospice at that time too. But yeah, I really got in my head about, did I fly too close to the sun? Did I step too far outside the realm of medicine? It started to concern me a bit because they love career changers, but they like it if your direction is going towards medicine, not away from it. I didn't want to have to explain, oh, this was just a professional development thing. They'd be like, why don't you just develop yourself in medicine? But I had gotten interested because my brother and all of his friends who I was living with at the time were loan officers. And I knew I was interested in sales because I wanted this set of skills of advocacy. And yeah, it paid off. It went by too quick, but it paid off.
That's so cool. That is such a unique journey. And it's something that we were talking about this earlier, not on camera, just being unique. What does that mean, especially when applying to medical school, applying to residency? I think it's so important to touch on those unique experiences and how that transformed you as an individual, using that experience of talking with someone, getting to know them, quick rapport, which is so important. And we don't talk about that enough. You have to be able to walk into a room and the patient has to trust you, and not just trust you because you have a white coat or a stethoscope on you. Actually trust
Rely on that a lot.
with their life.
Yeah, exactly. I think we rely on that a lot, the white coat. But yeah, it was funny. I remember I donated bone marrow one time and the doctor comes in. He's like really nice. I was tired. It was super early in the morning. He's really nice and trying to establish rapport. And I'm just like, dude, you got the white coat. Just stick the needle in my butt. It's fine. He was trying so hard and I feel bad. I'm like, man, I should have.
Right. Let's talk about, earlier said that you're applying to urology. So where did that surgery perspective come in?
Yeah, great. And that's something that I'm working on articulating for residency interviews. This kind of brings us back to POIS a little bit, Post Orgasmic Illness Syndrome. When I discovered that I had this disease and was set on pursuing medicine to study this disease, it seemed to be straddling neurology and urology. Yeah, dysarthria, that's not very much a urology condition, is it? It was first described by a guy named Dr. Waldinger, the neuropsychiatrist in the early 2000s. He did some work on it. And since then, it's been mostly urologists working on this. And back in the day, I don't know why, but I was like, whatever specialty studies this, I have to go into. I found myself rooting for urology with a U. I know they sound exactly the same, so I'm going to try to emphasize the urology. I think back to me very early as a pre-med. This was before I was committed to being a pre-med. I wanted to do surgery. This was before I had any concept of what it meant to be a doctor of any sort. I was just like, yeah, surgery. I want to be a surgeon. If I try to think about why, I think the best way I could describe it now is a performance sense. I've been a performer. If you think about it, we're all performers. We perform every day in our daily lives. My whole family played soccer. I'm one of 7 kids. All of us had a soccer game on Saturday. It was crazy. I don't know how my parents managed it, carpooling, but it was absolutely crazy. I played soccer for 12 years. I had an unfortunate injury during my junior year. So I didn't get to play my senior year. It was tragic. I also played piano growing up. So did all my siblings. But I was the one who latched onto piano the most. I think just that the dexterity, I got really into multiple competitive video games where you don't just zone out and drive a car around a city. It's a practice arena. I don't know if you've seen those first-person shooters. You practice aiming. You're playing against other real-life players, and it's a true test of skill. It requires honing your dexterity. Again, it's a skill to these games. Oh my goodness. I'm finding that I'm wanting to talk about the video game more than I am talking.
No, this is interesting. I would have never put 2 and 2 together. I see where you're going, the dexterity, the hand-eye coordination.
I want to talk about it more so than soccer and piano because I think it's a truer, and I was hoping I would want to talk about the other two more because it's a little more palatable for residency interviews.
You might have a really young resident interviewing you, and that gets it. I cannot provide advice on surgery, but it makes sense.
There was a movement for gamifying surgical training, and to the right people could totally work, but I'm just going to be candid here because that's what podcasts are for. Yeah, games, they'll have characters with different abilities that have different timers, different like effects. Trying to describe this the best I can without getting too in the weeds. You need to know those things. You need to have those second nature. They need to be memorized. There's this component of combining dexterity with a knowledge base. And then on top of that, having performances. It's the same as surgery. You have someone, you hit an artery. It needs to be second nature. You need to have a plan. You need to move immediately. There's a degree of working with what you have. And I can't speak because I'm not an experienced surgeon. In that moment where you hit an artery, you are holding particular things. Are they useful? Are they not useful? Get rid of it. Get what you need. If they are useful, there might be a little bit, I love this term because I grew up in a low resource household. We really had to throw out functional fixedness, which is I have a hammer, it's good for hitting nails. What else is a hammer good for?
Yes.
I have a bias towards assessing people's intelligence by their ability to break functional fixedness.
Oh my God, you and my husband would become such good friends. You guys just having similar type thoughts. So
yeah, it's so much fun finding a new use for something. I have
like you're saying, low income or low resource, like you only have certain things. So how can you use it?
Exactly. And I would love to work in something like MSF, the low resource place at some point in my career. But yeah, so in video games, you are put in impossible situations. In these matches, the other people have you up against a wall, you're cornered. What do you do with what you have? And I think it's the same thing in surgery. You need to be resourceful. You need to never give up. You need to say it's not over until it's over. It's just a performance. And I think video games have been a staple throughout my adult life where I've always had something, and I like to theory craft. I like to train my skills. I noticed if my dexterity is slipping, I'm like, better get on that. I think I need that in my life. And you know what they say, if you can get it from your job, get it from your job. I think I need surgery. I could not sit and do rounds for hours every day. I don't think it's for me. I hope this doesn't resurface if I end up applying medicine, which I won't. I'm pretty committed to urology.
You still round though.
You do round.
Standing or running. I feel like surgery, it's more running rounds.
Running rounds is more descriptive.
Yeah. I feel like with my short legs, it's running. For them, it's power walking.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Yeah. So obviously you still round. And that's where I'm glad I still get to see the patients while they're awake and discuss with the team. Teaching. I want that. I just know that I want my main activity. Rounding is not the main activity for surgeons, and that's the difference. Rounding is, okay, let's get it done by 7:15 so we can hit the OR by 7:30. Yeah, so I know I need that thing in my life. And I think it started with piano and soccer. Of course, same thing, knowledge base, skills that you hone repeated in a performance. I need that as a part of my life. And my fiance would love it if I could get that fix during the day so I could come home and be all here in the afternoons. Back to POIS, I think I was rooting for urology from the start, and I did a lot of exploring during undergrad. A lot of people explore during medicine, but I found surgery was cool up first. Then I was like, wow, infectious disease is pretty cool. So I joined an infectious disease lab. I had this mindset of just whatever you're interested in, if you're interested in it for more than a week, dive in. I was interested in emergency medicine, so I became an EMT. I was able to confidently be like, yeah, I don't think this is for me. As I started to weigh what I liked about each, what I didn't like about each, I was like, yeah, I think it's surgery and I think it's urology. Other component is the difficult conversations piece. Medicine is littered with difficult conversations, but I think there's this component of sexual medicine, especially among men, talking about erectile dysfunction. I think it's lofty to expect to entirely normalize the conversation about erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, because men are not going to want that to be news out there because it affects their prospects. Like, you're never going to get a man to be like, hey, everyone, I have erectile dysfunction and you should date me. It doesn't work like that. But I really want to work on lowering the barriers for men to get in the clinic. I want to be that guy who has the right touch of understanding without being patronizing, still being guy to guy and be like, oh, yeah, we'll get you fixed up. It's a really tough balance to strike, and that's what I like about it. I know there's difficult conversations with cancer and everything in a number of diseases. Like medicine is difficult conversations, but I'm definitely drawn to urology in particular.
I'm glad you brought up a difficult conversation regarding sexual health, because that is a great movement right now with the people going into urology recently that I've become friends with. That is a big thing of trying to normalize just sexual health conditions, not just in patients, but from the medicine side. If patients come in ready to talk, if a healthcare provider, if a doctor can't even utter the words erectile dysfunction, then where are we going to go?
No.
It's not going to go forward. So that is such a good point, and being able to educate. And aren't we both part of sexual medicine research team? Yeah.
Yep.
If anyone out there is a medical student or in the health field that is interested in improving sexual medicine research, some great urologists have come together. It's a group of medical students, residents, and other healthcare professionals passionate about improving research on sexual medicine. We're connected with ISHWISH, of course, Women's Sexual Medicine, the International Society of Medicine. We're connected to a lot of different ones. It's definitely a great group. You can email me if you want to learn more information about that.
And you can bring your own ideas. There's a lot of
Yes.
students who are looking to help with projects. Something that I learned, fortunately, relatively quickly in medicine is you just got to do something. They can't do anything until you have done something. So just bring your ideas. It's a very well-connected group. They have attending support and a lot of hands. I get messages every time I present my work saying, I want to help. Bring your idea, start doing things. We would love to continue to grow the community.
That's such a good point. If no one else is doing it, then you do it.
It's an interesting thing. It's somebody must have thought of that before. And maybe they did and they forgot about it. Maybe they didn't see it from the exact angle that you saw it from. Especially if you're someone who is a patient researcher, you have perspectives that nobody else has seen. And honestly, that's where my current project collecting data came from. You could say anybody could have thought of it, but at the same time, being a patient puts it right in your lap. I don't see that anywhere in the literature. Where is the documentations of the challenges of this disease? I remember the one-liner for an introduction or an abstract. Post Orgasmic Illness Syndrome is a rare sexual medicine disease, mostly affects men. Patients experience flu-like symptoms following orgasm. I'm like, it sounds like you get the sniffles. Sounds pretty inconvenient, a bit of a nuisance, right? That is not doing it justice. People literally get divorces, lose their jobs. And unfortunately, I would not be surprised if there were suicides from this disease. There are people talking about being on the edge in these forums. That's what it's like when you have no hope. There are things that work. And if you look online, there are tons of people claiming, oh, I cured my POIS by doing a full colon enema. I'm like, oh, okay. Another person, oh yeah, I just didn't orgasm for 5 years and that's how I cured it. And there's just a lot out there. It can be overwhelming. That's why we need science. That's what science is good for.
Research-based, right?
Yeah,
Research-based.
exactly. So people, maybe they tried a few of these things. There are people who've gotten prostatectomies trying to treat this disease. Yeah, straight up. As you can imagine that.
Who would do that? But
I know.
anyway, we're not here to, because we don't know the doctor, but you know what? The fact that you said patient researcher, like that's literally like the point of this, is to show
Yeah.
how much the patient perspective can be useful. I love that you said that, the patient researcher, just like patient doctor. And I think that will be so helpful. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
So how about you tell me some pearls of wisdom or advice that you have for other individuals that are either students or current health professionals that are like you, patient researchers or patient doctors, or hope to be?
Let's see. I definitely wouldn't consider myself an expert at this point. But what we talked about earlier, I think the most important thing is to do something. It's a very fine line in the mindset to decide whether or not this is an affliction or a catalyst for your opportunity to make your mark on medicine, to change your own life as a researcher and a patient, and to change the lives of patients and providers everywhere. You have a unique position you're trying to bring two groups of people together, right? Researchers slash clinicians and patients. You are both of those. So you are literally the missing link. Get out there, advocate for the patients. Also, believe it or not, advocate for the providers. Being a patient and provider, you are in a position to connect those two groups. A role that I have taken in particular is the chargedness of it, because as I said, with this patient group, they're frustrated. And when you're frustrated, you can take it out on the provider. It's the only other person that's there. They're your only hope, but they're also your scapegoat. So what I've been doing, and the angle that I'm trying to take, and this is also within the disability realm, and this is very challenging because you will be the bad guy to someone at some point, but your job is to take the chargedness out of either side. But change does take time. And you can say, we need change yesterday. We need to demand change. What does demanding do? If you don't have strings to pull, you're just breeding negativity. That's the sad reality of it. I think what you can do as a patient provider is relay those frustrations in a way that is productive. And you can be the filter. It's really important to be a liaison for each one of the groups. And you need to advocate for the researchers. You need to say, hey, the research process takes time. We're doing everything we can. And with that one comment earlier about, oh, maybe I should go work at McDonald's, I was just like, dude, I went to medical school. You know what I did with my post orgasmic illness syndrome? I made a career goal out of it. And you could do that too. So have some compassion for the researchers because they are choosing to circle their lives around you. Express some gratitude. I know that was maybe a little charged. I know I'm trying to be the one who takes the charges out of it, but you get what I'm saying. It's a relationship between the provider, the patient, the researcher, and the patient. And I think the unique perspectives that the patient provider has enables you to be that liaison that they really need.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Isaac, for sharing that perspective of how you were able to bring that link from your own healthcare condition and do something about it. Because it's like you said, each one has their own experience and position, but it's so important to be able to make that link and do something about it. And I like to quickly give a summary of all the things that you said. And I guess that kind of goes with it is of going to college and being a first generation doctor. You didn't have anyone in your family who was going into medicine or had been in medicine. So a lot of things you had to figure out on your own time, on your own timeline. I think that is something a lot of us can resonate with, being first gen medical students and first gen doctors, trying to figure out stuff on your own, even if that included doing post-bac programs, double majors, working multiple jobs. What matters is that you did it. You got over the hump and you were able to bring those experiences into your patient care of learning how to be compassionate, learning how to negotiate, whether that is trying to sell a mortgage to someone, or also learning how to read individuals when being a fondue server. Those are great experiences to show that there's not one way to become a doctor. There's not one way to be a medical student. There's not one way to do anything. It's your own individual journey and what you make of it. You also talked about how this kind of led you when you got into medical school to transition. Okay, is this a neurology thing, urology? And you've landed on urology and the impact of being a surgeon, of how you've been performing and preparing for surgery, not just through piano, but maybe also competitive video game and really honing in your dexterity. And you finished off with just talking about how if you have an idea, do something. You don't have to wait. Just do it and keep going, have those difficult conversations with others and not giving up. I think that is so important. So thank you, Isaac, so much for your vulnerability, your strength, your advocacy. I wish you very much luck for your upcoming residency adventures.
Thank you.
It'll be challenging, but worth it.
Yes.
I promise you.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I very much appreciate you sharing. And of course, everyone else, if you want to reach Isaac, how best to connect with you?
I have a Twitter. It's at ITHE, last name BRONSON. You can DM me, follow me, whatever.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I think that's how we connected. I saw your research in our research group, and then I posted it on Twitter. And then you responded, you're like, hey, that's actually my research. And I was like, let's talk. This sounds awesome.
That was so great.
Yeah. So, hey, right there, community. That's how it's formed with similar conditions and passions. I love that. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. I always like to end by saying, you're not alone in your struggle, no matter what the struggle is, no matter if it is struggling to deal with your personal health conditions, dealing with a relationship, dealing with your struggle with an exam. No, you are not alone. I know in that moment, in that time period, you can feel so alone and hopeless. I hope that this podcast will show that there is hope, whether if that is if you're a patient, if you're a student, or if you're both, there is a possibility to do something, to keep going, to be successful. If this story or any of the other ones resonated with you, please make sure you subscribe and share it with one other person, because you never know if they have a sexual health condition or another invisible disability. We're talking about sexual health. I have an entire section on MedPsycMoss on sexual health, sexual pain conditions. So if you're a patient, I have a patient section of resources. And then if you're a health provider, I have a health provider to learn how to help patients and learn more about these conditions. Thank you all so much. And I always said subscribe. So, and you can follow me on MedPsycMoss. I'm on all social media. Take care, everyone. Thank you again, Isaac.
This is Jackson, by the way.
Hi, Jackson. And of course has the ball.
Oh my goodness. You know what's funny? He knows that the ball means play, but he doesn't know that he needs to let you like hold the ball.
Yeah. My dog's the same way. Or he drops it on your computer. That's the ways. It's like this, we are playing right now, and here's the disgusting wet ball right on your computer.
I think I prefer it staying in his mouth if I would have to do that.